I love watching how video games are made. Developer commentaries, insiders, prototypes, cancelled projects, betas, developer visions, writing, mechanics. I love knowing all about these things, but I also despise it. You might think I'm an unstable human being after saying that, which I have to say, 1, maybe, 2, continue watching if you are interested in what I have to say. You see, one thing that makes me want to commit is watching what a game could have been, knowing that there are so many brilliant, fantastic, unused ideas, then realizing that none of what you just saw will ever happen. BioShock Infinite is one of my favorite games of all time. If you love BioShock Infinite, then you might find the early version that I'm about to talk about even 10 times better. However, this comes with a bit of a downside. This might make you dislike the retail version a tiny bit. So with that said, let's get into it. A couple of years back I came across a video by popular YouTuber Krobicat. It's called The BioShock Infinite We Never Got. It basically shows the different versions that the game went through throughout its development. And one of these was, to simply put it, the most beautiful piece of video game I have ever seen. So being the curious gamer that I am, I surfed the web watching everything I can about the game, reading every article, digging through anything I could find about that one version of BioShock Infinite. Seeing all the freedom, the tone of the game, how the Vox Populi used to attack you by jumping around and gliding all over the city skylines, the different choices that you could have made, all of that made me inspired, amazed, and sad at the same time, because I recognized why that brilliant game was simply not possible. And the reason for that was because of two things. The first being the usual, technological limitations. The game had, as I said before, much more freedom with more openness than the retail version, to the point where it was just too much freedom for the devices back in the day to handle. And the second reason, aka the main reason for the cut content, was over ambition. The game just simply was too over ambitious for its own good. It had too many things that had to be cut in order to actually form a game. And so that means a lot of scrapping and rethinking had to be done. Most of the things that would be cut from the script or rethought were already developed set pieces and gameplay segments that had to be thrown down the toilet, which is just unfortunate. And it doesn't stop there. No, brother. It's not the only game that ran through this. Half-Life 2 is also a victim where it has so many cancelled projects and overhauls, it's enough to fit in its own 1 hour long video. Episode 3, Half-Life Ravenholm, Half-Life Beta. When I hear those words, I immediately become Max Payne. God damn it! Because of how many painkillers I have to take to relieve my pain. Anyways, we won't be focusing on Half-Life 3 because, well, Half-Life Alyx has already changed as well as continued the ending of Episode 2. On top of that, Episode 3 is indeed being made by the fans under the name of Project Borealis. This means we'll focus on the beta and Ravenholm. Starting with the beta, let's just say that Half-Life 2 beta is Half-Life 2 but much more gothic and fucked up. I mean, let's just look at the concept art for a minute. The Combine looked so much more threatening and horrifying. The whole world was just so goddamn dark and depressing and dead, with the only safe place for people to live in being City 17, where they live as slaves under the authority of the Combine, being spoon-fed propaganda 24/7. Also, those goddamn flamethrower enemies, why are they not in the game? Just why? Gabe, come on. Why? In summary, Half-Life 2 was just the embodiment of depression, the game. So if it looks so cool, then why did Valve change from the beta style to the Half-Life 2 we all know? Well, to put it simply, it was too depressing, which is honestly understandable. Another important factor was mentioned by one of the developers who said that the Half-Life 2 beta's length was too long to the point of being boring, and that the game was too overblown. But you know, at least this one released in some form. Sure, it got rid of the green filter and basically the depression, but the game released. That is something that I cannot say about Half-Life Ravenholm. After the success of Half-Life 2, Valve wanted to hire a studio that could make a sort of a standalone Half-Life episode. Firstly, they hired Junction Point Studios, who wanted to make a game about the backstory of Ravenholm and Father Gregory. However, the project was cancelled and later given to Arcane Studios to handle, who had to start from scratch. And right here, ladies and gentlemen, is where the pain begins again. The sad part about Arcane's case is that they actually did work on the game quite a bit, to the point where it reached an alpha state. It wasn't the same game that Point originally intended to make. In my eyes, it was even better, as the focus shifted towards a sequel for Opposing Force featuring Adrian Shepard. Supposedly, Arcane's version was also leaning more towards horror and linearity, with the whole game being based around killing zombies and solving puzzles in creative, dynamic ways. Now, I know what you're thinking. Arcane's build of the game seems like it was headed in the right way. They weren't in development hell, they knew what they were doing, and they were doing what they were doing. Well, why was it cancelled then? Mark Laidlaw, who is the writer of the Half-Life games, revealed that Valve cancelled Ravenholm because the idea of headcrabs and zombies was, and I quote, pretty much played out at the time, and that also the game taking place before Episode 2 was creatively constraining, to which I say, I respect you, Laidlaw, I love your work, but why? You might have noticed that one question is being asked quite a lot in this video. We'll get to that later, because I still have one more game to talk about. Fallout New Vegas. You literally cannot mention cut content and game development without saying New Vegas. Where do I start? A whole faction was cut in half. An important companion was scrapped. Freeside is almost empty, and New Vegas itself is just a bunch of casinos with no residential areas. Like, why? There's so much shit that wasn't put in the game that was supposed to be in the game. I just find myself always asking that one question. Why? Why Gabe? Why Todd? Why Josh Sawyer from Obsidian Entertainment? Kojima, you goddamn... I know you're behind all of this. You answer me right. In conclusion, I just want to say that it's always fun to uncover what went behind the scenes of our favorite video games. Getting a new perspective is extremely interesting and eye-opening, even if it's kinda sad. Plus, seeing things like this is, as I said before, inspiring. I wouldn't have even made this video in the first place had I not watched all those no-clip documentaries and interviews. Hell, sometimes you go through a game's developer documentary and you stand there and realize that the final version you got is 10 times better than the beta or alpha. All three games that I used as an example are masterpieces in my eyes. So ultimately, we will never really know whether the final product would have been better or not. Unless it's New Vegas. In that case, it's always, and I mean always, better.